Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Sandalina, and I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Satar. Today's guest is Ashish, who is a South Asian content creator, editor, and producer, formerly with Popshift and now starting his own agency, The Third Place. He is also the co-founder of the dance championship DDN Legends. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So I met Ashish for the first time in October of 2023 at the Popshift Halloween party. I'd heard a lot of positive things about him from mutual friends. And after that event, we followed each other on Instagram. I was keeping up with some of the work that he was doing and was frankly very impressed by some of the projects he was working on, especially through Popshift. So I figured in early 2024, I would reach out and see if he wanted to be on the show, to which he generously responded yes. So here we are, and I can't wait to pick out your brain a little bit.
I'm excited to see what you're going to pick.
So let's start from the very beginning. Who were you as a child? Where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit more about your upbringing.
Yeah, so my upbringing, I was born in India. I don't remember it really at all. I moved to Orlando when I was 2.5. Okay. So grew up in Florida. Hope that doesn't make me a Florida man, but apparently that's what people
We'll
like to think.
check the news headlines for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I grew up in Orlando. It's suburbia. Went to Disney World every now and then. It wasn't like as crazy as everyone makes it out to seem. But yeah, like Orlando was just like a small town and had a lot of just like friends in the neighborhood, used to run around and just play with our imaginations, like we would take like sticks and stuff and those would be our guns. I remember like one time, I think we like really liked creating our own games growing up. So I remember like one time we're like, yo, like let's play ice hockey, but we're in like Florida, so we'll get roller skates and a tennis ball and recycling bins, and now we've got hockey. And so yeah, just like we would just like find things and be like, oh, we want to do this and we'll make it this way. And then my dad was a computer engineer, so I was kind of lucky enough to have a computer at home with good internet before a lot of my friends, and discovered the wonderful world of Neopets, which I mentioned this to you before, but I love the butterfly effect. And I think like that's probably the earliest trace of anything happening for me in life, because I played Neopets, and like if you're unfamiliar with Neopets, you have a little pet, you play games, you get money, and then you buy things for your pet, right? But there's also this other side, which was like the 13 plus side, but I wasn't 13, I was like 10. But like lied about my age.
I was gonna say, did you have to? Yeah.
And yeah, so there was like all these like chat rooms and these guilds, and these guilds were like these like mini micro websites, and you kind of like joined these like little clubs, and the guild could be for like everyone who loves pizza, or just like some like random thing that like everyone would get behind. And so rather than like playing a lot of the games, I discovered that like you could make money if you designed these guild websites, right? So I didn't have Photoshop, didn't have money, so I like was like, oh, what's a free alternative? There's GIMP, and it's like an open source Photoshop thing. So I started learning that, started learning how to HTML code, and then.
And how old are you at this point now?
Like 10, like
10,
legit
11?
10.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so like that's how I was learning like how to design and kind of like websites and stuff. And then at some point, my dad bought me my own domain. I was once the owner of mangolusty.com.
Oh my gosh.
So fun fact, yeah, there was a point in time where I owned that website. I don't know, I was like a maybe teenager, 12, I don't know. And I just like, my dad's like, what website do you want? I was like, mangolusty.com. And actually like, this is like the early like days of the internet.
Right.
Because that website, like that website, you go there and it's just an audio recording of me going mango lusty, mango lusty, mango lusty. But the
It's
mango,
still up?
no, it's not.
Okay,
it's not
okay,
up there.
okay.
But yeah, it was just like this audio recording of me like being like the most annoying song ever. Like put the mango in the lusty, and what do you get? And it just loops, and that was the entire website. But then I like got like more complicated. Learned how to like made forums of my own, just learning through like online things. And I didn't know how to code, but I knew how to like read instructions and like figure out things.
You mentioned you grew up in Orlando, specifically in Florida. So what was the demographic like? You mentioned you had a lot of friends, but was there a South Asian presence, or were you kind of one of the only?
Yeah, so South Asian presence wise, I used to go to Chinmay Mission, which is like a Sunday school for like Hindu kids.
Okay.
And so I'd learn philosophy, Hinduism, as well as like how to read and write in Hindi. And that was like my one time like a week on Sundays where I would get a dose of culture.
Okay.
And I think like a lot of who I am in terms of just like publicly speaking, like culturally, and just kind of like how in tune with a lot of like the tradition and religion and culture and all of that comes from that. My parents kind of learned that like if they weren't a part of it, they were never going to take me and my brother there. So they started volunteering there. My dad later became like one of the directors of the mission. And so they inadvertently put me into everything, which was like plays, or I was emceeing our award shows, or
Nice.
like, just different things that were happening. I ultimately like ended up at the center of a lot of them. And so that's kind of how I think like I emceeing at a young age, which like I've emceed a lot of weddings now, and it's kind
Nice.
of like turned into writing comedy bits and things like that. And
Yeah.
so that's like definitely one of the early influences. When I went to like high school, there were three other Indian kids in my school, and they
Wow.
knew basically nothing about Indian culture.
Okay.
So they were really like raised American, didn't really know how to speak another language, didn't really like grow up watching Bollywood movies the same way that
Right.
I did. So yeah, so it was just very interesting because it's like this was my one pocket of like Indian culture, and
Yeah.
then everything else was just like very diverse.
And then what was your parents' parenting philosophy while raising you? And how would you assign different characters and attributes to your parents?
I think my mom was more like nurturing, caring. She's kind of like the day to day, like, like if it was like a company, she's like my day to day manager or whatever, like telling
Okay.
me what I have to do. Then like my dad's like the guy that gets called in whenever I'm in trouble. Um, but yeah, no, growing up, I think like their philosophy was really like one really big credit that I give to them is when we first moved to Orlando, I think a lot of other Indian parents really tried to get their kids to learn the language, English and stuff. And my parents were like, no, like Ashish is going to learn English, is going to school. If we don't teach him Hindi, he's not going to be able to speak in Hindi.
Right.
And so they would only speak to me in Hindi at home to the point where like I had to like use or I had to ask my teachers how to use the restroom and like get water in like Hindi. Like I didn't know how to
Oh
do that
my
in English
gosh.
when I was like in kindergarten and whatnot. Um, but I think that really helped my sense of language. I like, I'm fluent in Hindi and whatnot. So that was like really nice. I was also like, I think like most Desi parents do this, but like, summers weren't time for me to play. They were time for me
Right.
to like learn the next grade level's worth of work that like counted for no points or nothing. I'm like, why am I learning this when I'm going to learn this? Um, so yeah, I think they were like kind of like strict on the academic front in that regard, where like it was important for them
Right.
that I was learning a lot of these like academically important things, and then also with like instruments, like my parents really wanted me to learn an instrument, so we went through tabla, we went through piano, guitar, violin, and like ultimately I'm just not musically talented. So I think it was like a very like South Asian focus, like, hey, academics are important. You should be physically fit. You should learn an instrument, like all
Right.
of the things that will help your resume.
You mentioned that you have a brother, is that correct?
Yeah, I have a younger brother.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. So what's the dynamic been like? Is he your only sibling? And what's it been like being the older brother growing up?
We were similar and different in various ways, and I think that's like only grown. Um, but yeah, he was like, I think I was always trying to create something. So again, like I'm on Neopets, and that eventually like led to me like learning how to draw and paint, and finally got a camera and stuff. And my brother was like intellectually curious about everything, so he grew up getting in trouble because he was like, "Oh, let me open up this remote to see how it works," but he has no
Mm,
idea how it works, so it's just opening up a remote. All of his toys, like any remote control car, like he would have it for a day or two, and then like it's broken, right?
right.
Because he was just like trying to like figure out how things worked. I think like for him, that led to going into he's a software engineer, but that led him into that like engineering journey, which my dad could help out with because he was a software engineer as well. Whereas for me, I didn't really have anyone at home that could like really cultivate my artistic talents, right? So like I would go to school, and like me and my friends are drawing Dragon Ball Z characters, and then I'm at
Right.
home and I'm drawing Dragon Ball Z characters, but like I never had like a strong like I didn't have like any like formal foundation into art, and it was always kind of like constantly me learning this through like the internet or drawing or like whatever it would be. I think like when my nani came once, that was like one of like those like pivotal moments. She like came, she brought like this like glass painting kit with her, and I like very vividly remember like, oh my god, like this is so cool learning how to get like glass paint with her.
That's sweet.
And yeah, like one of the times I went to India, she would be like, hey, like like I would draw all these like jagged lines. She's like, no, like make your lines straight. And like so some of that like instruction came from her, but like didn't like directly come from my parents.
So now that you are on the path of pursuing something more creative, are your parents supportive in the present day?
Very much so. I think like that was a shift that took a while. Like literally called my parents yesterday and I was like, hey, I'm leaving Popshift. And my dad's like, what are you gonna do? And I was like, well, I'm working on my TV pilot, and then I'm, gonna start an agency with a couple of my friends. And my dad's like, I've not read your TV pilot. I've not heard anything. I know nothing about it. I just saw you do your table read. I like overheard it and I've just seen whatever you put on social media here and there. But he's like, I don't know why. I just have a feeling that this is going to make it. And it was like a very like I was like, like my dad doesn't usually like my dad's always like, hey, like you're doing pop shift. Make sure you're getting, your healthcare taken care of. Are you getting this? Are you getting that? Like XYZ. Like he's very practical. He's always like, like where's your safety net? And for the first time, he's like, I don't know. I just have a feeling you're gonna do it. And so that
Wow.
was like a big like little change. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
That's a huge unlock. And I think it's really important for us to have parental support in that regard
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, like that's our family. And I think it's important to have people to lean on that believe on you because conversely, if it was the opposite relationship or which is all oftentimes happens in our community too,
Hmm.
but if it was the opposite relationship of, don't do this, don't go after this, you're wasting your life away, it's a different feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I've been that one too. So
yeah. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
yeah, as a kid, I used to say I wanted to be three things. I wanted to be, I wanted to be a lawyer, actor, or director.
Wow.
Yeah, and somewhere that director, like my parents, tried to change to doctor for a really long time, and yeah,
Close enough in
close.
pronunciation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I kind of like, again, I was emceeing for like
Right.
the Sunday school, and I just kind of like had fun just acting or like whatnot. Um, at some point, like I would take our video camera that we had at home and I would like create characters out of like pencil grips and like then try to like act in things. I remember like I did like a comedy stand up in my garage and my
Wow.
audience was like my like little plush toys like my Pikachu and like little things and I put like a laugh track behind them but like so it's like I was always like doing like little things so yeah and like for the longest time I just wanted to be the star of the show and
Yeah.
then but I also kind of knew that I like wanted to like create the show as well so there was that. I to this day love arguing. I loved arguing when I was a kid. So I was like, yeah, like I could go to trial. Like I could be a lawyer. And at some point I was like, oh, it's a lot of reading and not a lot of arguing. So I
Yeah,
was like,
sounds
maybe
about
we're
right.
not going to go down law. Law is still like something I am deeply passionate about.
Wow.
Yeah, like even like for Popshift and actually like even other companies, like I'm always one of the first people to just like review the contracts, right?
Okay.
Like I'm like, okay, like let me see what this is actually saying. I spent a lot of time on like legal advice for Reddit for no reason, just to like
Oh
learn
wow.
stuff.
Yeah.
I took a media law class, was like one of the most fun classes I've ever taken.
Wow.
But yeah, I think it's like it's like logical arguments and like things and like like it's a fun like intellectual kind of discourse sometimes.
And then in high school, so you mentioned that you were one of the only South Asian kids and probably the most cultured
Hmm.
in the bunch. And so, how did that kind of impact your high school experience? Do you feel like you fit into a certain archetype in high school? Do you think you're more of the quiet kid, more of the outgoing kid? Where were you socially?
I was a really weird kid in high school and largely in college too.
Do you ever feel like there were times in grade school where you were socially outcasted by a function of being quote unquote the weird kid as you described it? Or do you think that people usually minded their own business and it wasn't a big issue?
High school, I was in the IB program. So
Okay.
it's like we're all nerds. You know
Right.
what I mean? We're all geeks. We're all weird in our own ways. Um, and I think like what I was not afraid to be was myself. Like the one TV show that like actually like made me want to be a director, like a filmmaker, was House MD. And it was the
Okay.
show that showed me that like I don't have to be a doctor, I can just create a doctor. Right? Like that's how but I work with us on Diwali and other holidays to high school to be like, oh, like today's Diwali, like it's important. And so I was weird, but like again, like I'm with a bunch of nerds who also have like different weird things.
Yeah.
And I think naturally I'm just a people person. So like I actually had a lot of friends amongst like again the nerds,
In the same crowd, right?
so the fact that I was just always unapologetically me, kind of like there was a little bit of respect in that. Like it's like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna say to me? Like, are you gonna diss me for wearing my clothes and my culture? Like,
Yeah.
no, you're okay. And also like in that IB program at that school, like there was a lot of diversity. I think a lot of Asian diversity, especially.
Okay.
And so like it encouraged other people as well. Like,
And you touched on a really interesting point that I liked is that you carried yourself with confidence, and that's why you feel like people weren't necessarily like ragging on you socially.
yeah.
And I think that one thing I've noticed in social settings, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, it's oftentimes it's not what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. So
Mhm.
if you're doing something great, but you're doing it with a chip on your shoulder and you're very insecure and very self conscious, people aren't going to respect what you're doing generally. Or look your way even twice. But if you're doing something that you care about and you're carrying yourself with grace and confidence, I think a lot of people end up looking up to you too. And that's something that I've noticed in social settings beyond grade school, in the adult world too. So I think that's a really important lesson you learned at a young age, that you can be your own person as long as you know what you're doing, then nobody else can move you.
Yeah.
So tell me more about where you went to school, what major you pursued, and what your plans were.
I went to the University of Miami, and originally it was because my parents were like, you have to be pre-med. And that was like a whole battle that spanned across family members, family friends. And yeah, it was like a long, like, I really wanted to go to school for film.
Yeah.
And it was just like, we have no resources in like the media world. We have no like, connections. We know nothing about this. And the likelihood that you're going to make it is zero. Like, no one makes it here unless they know someone, and we know no one, right? Like, that was like the resounding message that I got from my family, is that you'll never make it in film. Like, you don't have enough talent, you haven't done anything, we know no one. So I was pre-med for 2 years. It was like a twofold thing. Like, one, for the first time in my life, I'm struggling with academics, right? So I was a straight A student throughout high school, like, and I didn't have to try. Like, I just naturally learned things. And now that I'm having to dig a lot deeper than surface level, right? And like, also in like high school, your classes are so much smaller, so it's like easy to pay attention to the teacher,
Yeah.
right? I'm like so far away from the lecture hall or from the professor. There's no like one-on-one relationship. I'm not coming every day. It just changed a lot of things, and so like learning became difficult. And
Right.
it was like also this part of me that just like, I would open a biology book and I'm just like so uninterested that it's like so hard to just continue reading the pages. And I'm like reading it and I'm like, what did I just read? And I'm reading it over. And like, I've read this page 4 times and I've digested nothing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for the first time in my life, I felt stupid. I was like, oh, great. Like, what happened? Like, where did I go from getting A's to now getting B's, got my first C in like organic chemistry. And I'm just like, what is going on? So that caused a lot of stress, and anxiety that like built up over 2 years. And on the other end, like, I even like throughout high school, like, I was always very involved in a lot of the different organizations. I started a debate club. I was, president of our art club, president of our Mu Alpha Theta, part of a lot of organizations, and that also carried forward. So like, I had started, or I was like, making videos for our dance teams, and I was part of our Ross Garba comp as like, kind of like creative as well as like a logistics chair. And so, and I was part of our ISA, our Indian Students Association, our Hindu Students Council.
Nice.
And so here I am organizing a bunch of events. I'm creating things for these like dance teams and this like Ross competition. And I became pretty quickly, like, I was the go-to guy for like anyone Indian who needed a video, right? And I was loving it. And like, I just very vividly like remember thinking like, the amount of time that I'm spending on all of these things that are like the different organizations that I'm a part of, the dance competitions, the video work, the graphic design, is like more time than I'm even spending in class plus studying. And I'm enjoying every bit of this and hating every bit of this. And like, I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, there's no way in the world that I want to be a doctor. Like, I already know this. And like, continuing down this path, like, I only see like more misery. And it like was the first time that I was like breaking down. I started seeing a therapist, and that kind of led to the conversation with my parents where I'm like, look, like, it is this bad that I'm seeing a therapist in college right now. Like, I didn't ever think about this. Like, I never even considered mental health like a big thing. But I was like, I can't do this. Like, I've tried this for 2 years. And at this point, like, there is no moving forward for me, like, and I think that was like a wake up call for my parents and like, okay, cool. Like, what do you want to do? Like, and I was like, I want to do film. Like, like, if I make it, I make it. If I don't, like, we'll figure it out. And they were like, okay, like, don't say we didn't tell you so or whatever. But like, they're like, okay, like, if that's what it is, then like, do that. So then I graduated with a degree in the business of motion pictures, a business admin minor, and a chemistry minor.
Wow.
Because of the 2 years of pre-med. I started applying to jobs. 4 or 5 months had gone by and no hits. And it didn't help that my parents had no resources, no contacts, and no way for me to get a job in media. So got an email one day from a company called Epic, and they are a healthcare IT company. Their email basically said that, we've had a lot of success with students from the University of Miami's communication school. We would invite you to apply. And it was like an email from a recruiter. I'd happened to have like met this guy that later became one of my really good friends, and he was also at this company, and he had told me, he was like, oh yeah, I like signed an offer. This was the company I wanted to go to. So I gave him a call and I was like, hey, Neil, like, what is Epic? Like, what do they do? What is
Right.
this like project manager role? Like, do you think I could do it? And he's like, oh, it's like this, and this. You know, you're managing like these like timelines, and it's all of this. And I was like, oh, this kind of sounds a lot like my event organization experience a little bit. Just
Right.
like, you know, I was like, I think I could do this. And then got a job in healthcare IT as a project manager.
And at what point in the timeline does co-founding Legends come in? So does it come in before the first full-time job or after? Or?
So it comes in after. One
Okay.
thing I didn't mention was while I was in college, so this is after those 2 years of
Right.
being pre-med, I started a dance competition called Dance Ke Divane. And this was a Bollywood fusion. So we had our Garba Ross, and I was kind of just like, yo, this is cool, but I don't really care about Garba Ross. I'm not Gujarati. It's not for me.
Sure.
Like, I like Bollywood. Yeah, this is way more fun. So, like, I want to start a Bollywood fusion competition. And I think, like, one of the great things about the University of Miami, and one of the more underrated things about private colleges in general, is just their wealth of resources.
Right.
So the University of Miami actually funded like 80% of this dance competition for me, which is really, really cool. And so, yeah, I started this dance competition, which is how I got involved with like the Desi Dance Network, which was just starting out as like a 400, 500 person Facebook group at this time.
Wow.
So now there's like tens of thousands of people in it. But at this time, there were like literally somewhere between 400 to 500 people. And because I was starting this competition, you know, someone found me, they're like, oh, you should join this Facebook group and advertise your competition here. So I did Dance Ke Divana, DKD, and I really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. I think that was one of the biggest growing experiences that I had in college. Grew a lot. That was the first time that I was like really, I was in charge of like 24 other people.
Wow.
And they're kind of like always looking at me as like, you know, okay, you're starting this as your vision. What are we doing?
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh crap, like I really have to like know what I want, know what to tell other people. They're all going to be looking up to me. They're all asking me questions, and I need to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So when I went to Madison, Wisconsin, which is where Epic was and where they required me to be, I kind of looked around and found that like you know the University of Wisconsin Madison had their own like Bhangra fusion, like Bollywood fusion, like competition. So it was half Bhangra, half Bollywood fusion called Dekhe Zara ADZ. So I reached out to them. I was like, hey, I co-founded this competition. Do you guys have any places on your board? Like, I would like love to like stay in touch with this like you know community. And they're like, oh, we are actually like looking for a logistics chair. Why don't you hop on?
Okay.
So did that. Got to meet more people. So I'm you know working on that with the University of Wisconsin kids, college kids. I just graduated. Like I'm still a kid too at this point. But yeah, so I'm working on this competition with them, meeting more people. And at some point, this competition happens, and I was like, okay, like this is, you know, this season of dance is over. And there was another competition called Bollywood America that was
Okay.
then the championship at the time. And that's kind of what everyone looked to as like, this is where, you know, the end all be all. And that year, which was 2016, it was like the worst competition ever, apparently. Like everyone on Facebook was up in arms of just like, hey, the hospitality was bad, the judges were biased, this was bad, like the directors didn't know what they're doing, and like this is all hearsay. I don't know what's true or what's not. I wasn't
Sure.
there, but that's all of these messages that were like flooding, and somehow like because I had met people, someone inserted me to a Facebook group chat.
Okay.
And in that group chat, it's just these messages, one after another after another. And so I kind of like flipped it. I was like, yo, like, what would you guys want to do? Like, how would you fix this? And so suddenly people are like talking about like, oh, well, I would create this system because first off, like the whole system of judging is biased. Like we need to like standardize this. So like one judge can't skew all the rankings and like this and that. And I was like, and so there were a lot of these ideas. I was just basically like, why don't we get on like a Google Hangout, right? And just get on a video chat and just talk about these things, and I'll just take some notes.
Yeah.
So it became like more formal, more productive, and I was like, oh, okay, like these are like kind of cool ideas. Why don't we like have another meeting? And there's this guy, his name's Bryant Fan. I owe a lot to him, and so he was actually the person. He went to Stanford, an Asian guy, but
Okay.
he is actually like the founder of DDN.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
he incorporated it as a nonprofit organization. He created that Facebook group, did a lot for this community, and he messaged me on the side. He's like, "Hey, like," and I think me and other people are like, "Hey, why doesn't like DDN like as a nonprofit like start its own championship?"
Right.
And so I had reached out and said that. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see." And he was also on these calls. And so one day he reached out to me. He's like, "Yo, I think we're gonna do this like championship." And I was like, "Oh, that's dope. I'd love to be a part of it." He's like, "Yeah, I think I want you to be one of the directors."
Nice.
And I was like, what? Like, like in my mind, I'm like, I'm not a dancer. I don't really have like that much experience. And, I like started my little competition in Miami. I was like helping out here. He's like, no, like, you've been automatically like leading these meetings and I really like the initiative. And I think you have good ideas and like you really structure this well. Like, I think you should be one of the directors of this like championship. And so we put out applications. We found a lot of those people, brought them in, and then we started creating like new judging rubrics. We created a whole new way to score teams, all of that. And somehow we came up with the name Legends while we were kind of like
It's a good
brainstorming.
name. Yeah.
It's a great name, but along the path of us creating Legends, right? Bryant had reached out to Zee TV and he just shot him a cold email out of the blue and was like,
And could you explain to the audience what Zee TV is?
yeah, so Zee TV, the way I like to describe it is like kind of like the Fox of India, right? So Fox has multiple channels, like multiple news outlets, all of that sort of stuff. You can have like drama, you can have all of that. Zee TV has a bunch of different channels for news, drama, entertainment, all of that. So yeah, there's just a big television conglomerate in India.
Got it.
And so Zee TV also has a presence here. They mainly syndicate the content out of India, and then they'll just take like advertising money from like whoever's here.
Got it.
Right. So Bryant reached out to Zee TV, which like is a household name, and was like, hey, we're doing this like dance, we're creating this dance championship. It's gonna be like a big cultural moment. Do you guys want to like send someone to cover it? And Zee TV replied like, hey, we don't like really cover events like this, but do you guys think you could create some content around it and we'll air it on our channel
Nice.
in America?
That's huge.
And so Bryant comes back with like, hey, Zee TV is interested in like making something. So we were like, yeah, that's like crazy that Zee TV wants us to make something. And I was like, yo, guys, like I studied film, like I could probably make something. Like, why don't we make like a documentary? But ended up creating a documentary for Zee TV. It was like an hour special that like they aired. But while I was doing that, I kind of turned into like the main primary contact with Zee TV.
Okay.
Because I wanted to. And I was like, hey, like I'll network my way, talk to them, and eventually like, shot my shot. And I was like, hey, I studied this. I'm making this piece of content for you guys. If there's any openings for any production work, like I would love to be considered, and would love a job with you guys. And it was right place, right time.
Right.
They were like, we're actually like starting, we've set aside a pot of money to create like Indian American content. And so, they're like, we could use one more person. If you want to be an intern for $500 like a week, then
oh my gosh.
why don't you come through?
Yeah.
And I was like, great, let me quit my job.
Great.
And so I was like, yeah, like for $2,000 a month, like I'm here in New York. Let's do it.
So what year is this, by the way?
This is 2017.
Okay.
So quit my job. I hadn't heard anything back from Zee TV. I was like, hey, what's up with this? And basically like, sorry, like we don't have this available. And I'm like, I quit my job. Like,
yeah.
What do you mean? And they're like,
Jeez.
yeah, like tough luck. So then I went to like Chicago. I had no job. And I was like, okay, and that point I was like, I'm not going back into tech, like healthcare, IT, whatever.
Sure. One thing that I really like throughout all of this is it's a lot of you, A, believing in yourself, B, taking the initiative to be in the right place at the right time, and C, constantly having the confidence to ask for things. And I think that's something that a lot of the viewers could take away from that journey is that's not very common. There are a lot of people that dream of doing something but don't actually execute on that. So I just want to take a second to commend you on that because I think that's a very important trait to have to be successful, especially in the entertainment space.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think like I have a lot of advice on how to do that properly.
Yeah.
And like it's super common if you listen to any like motivational speakers, business type of like podcast.
Yeah.
But it's like always give that value first and then take the ask.
Yeah.
Right. With Legends, like my first thing was just like coordinating these meetings, taking notes, right?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't doing that because I had an ask. I didn't even think that I would be like a part of this thing if it turned into any. There was nothing to even turn into, right?
Yeah.
But it's like gave that value. And then when the time came, like the ask actually just came to me. Like, would you want to direct, right? Even with Zee TV, like before I did any asking, I was like, you're going to see my work first, right?
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm making this documentary. You're going to see my work ethic. You're going to see my end product, right? Once I delivered that, I was like, you saw this. If there's an opening, I'd love to work with you.
Yeah.
And I think like I get a lot of people that hit me up. They're like, hey, can you do this for me? And it's just like, what are you doing for me?
Yeah.
You know?
It has to be mutually beneficial.
Usually
to some degree.
Usually it's not, but it's like, even if it wasn't, like make my life easier somehow, right? There's like so many ways. Like people are like, like when I was with Popshift, I'd get a lot of people that are like, hey, like, why don't you share my music? Like, why don't you consider me as an artist? I'd love to be an editor for you, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, let's start with that one. Like, I'd love to be an editor for you. I don't want to have to like search your profile to find your reel, right?
Yeah, of course.
If you have a reel, cool, maybe I'll look at it. But like, if you were like, hey, I saw this video you guys made, here's my take on it, I'm already intrigued to be like, how did you do it better than me?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you did, you're already showing me something that I'm learning, and like, I'll take you way more seriously and would give you a shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're an artist, like, that's reaching out to me like, yo, you should put me on. Like, why? First off. But
Yeah.
two, like, just think about like what I would need like as a producer, a content creator, right? Like if you're a musician and an artist and you want to be put on like Popshift's platform, be like, hey, like I saw you guys were making these type of videos. Here's a track that I've already mixed into a video that I think would blend really well. If you guys want to use this track for free, like feel like go ahead.
Yeah.
Regardless of like how good or like what your social like clout might be or anything, like I'm going to watch that video and I'm going to listen to your song.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're just like, yo, I just made this new song, you guys should put it up. Like, I'm going to be like, yo, you and everyone else. Right. Like, I don't have time to listen to you. Right. And so it's like, it's just a matter of like reframing things to give that value to the person because you're thinking ahead. Right.
And I think that's important. So a lot of people in this, I'm new to this world, but one thing that I learned a lot in networking, especially when it came to looking for like a corporate job, is a lot of people just jump to the chase and they ask for a job.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, it's about creating some sort of a relationship, bringing something to the table and actually watering something over time and letting it grow, as opposed to going straight for what you can get out of it. You have to make sure that there's value that you're bringing as well. So to your point, I think that that's a lesson that's applicable across many industries, including entertainment, which is what you're touching upon too.
Yeah. And I think like as much as I hate to say it, because it's like, look, like everyone deserves to get paid. Right.
Of course.
But like if you don't have your foot in the door, you have to make your sacrifices, right? And that's gonna sometimes be like, yo, I made this for free for you.
Yeah.
Right. Or it's gonna be like, yo, I'm working for Zee TV and I'm making $500 a month.
Yeah.
Right. And you're gonna have to pay your dues before you kind of earn that credit to be like taken more seriously.
Yeah.
And that's just the unfortunate reality is like you're going to have to give more than you get to be at a place where you're getting what you're worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Walk me through the point in time that we left off at, and take me all the way through the present through Popshift.
So yeah, so then I was working with Zee TV. I had renegotiated my contract at some point to make just a little bit more money.
Okay.
And a year had kind of gone by, and I just wasn't loving it there. And kind of was like, okay, like I think I need to reevaluate. So one of the guys I'd worked with, his name's Jacob. He owns a company called Click Play Films. He's like, yo, like you actually do like really good editing. Like if you ever need a job or like want to do something on the side, like hit me up. So day after I left Zee TV, I shot him a text or a call. Again, right time, right place. He was like, I just finished up this project. I'm getting this footage now. If you can come by tomorrow, I'll let you edit it. And then eventually he kind of took me under his wing. So I worked with him for 2 years, and he hired me as just an editor to begin with. But like later he taught me how to produce. He was showing me like, hey, how do you budget? Like, what are you looking for? How do you find people, for these projects? Like, who are you hiring? Why are you hiring these people? Like, like you need to know what your client wants, what they're then like figure out like the reels for your editor or your like DP so that it matches that end vision. And then COVID hit.
Right.
So then I went back home to Orlando where my parents were, started making TikTok videos with my parents. I started like this whole reality show where my mom's trying to get me married during quarantine. It was called Home Shanti Home, and that's how a lot of people.
That's a good name, Home Shanti Home.
Home Shanti Home.
You come up with that on your own?
I did.
Wow.
And each episode of that series is about a minute long.
Okay.
And it took me somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of work on that 1 minute.
I believe it.
And so yeah, like my full-time job was just making TikToks for nothing. I amassed a very like humble following, and one day I make like an ad with Dill Mill. So I met someone, one of the marketing managers at Dill Mill. That'll become important later.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like COVID time, and I'm like, okay, like I got to get a job. Jacob's like, yo, I can't. There's no filming going on. I don't have money. Like I'm losing money. Found the first job I could, which was in marketing. It was really missing that like video production itch, and I was just itching to be back in New York. And finally, Jacob calls me one day. He's like, hey, I've got the funds. Like come back. Like I need you. So I come back to New York. We're kind of back on, track to work on things. The person I knew from Dill Mill hits me up. It's like, hey, would you be down to make a TikTok ad for They See Me Dating? And I was like, what's that? She's like, oh, it's like this company, Popshift. They made this dating show. We're looking for people to like react to it or create ads or something. And I was like, sure, like I'm down. And that was my first time like learning about Popshift.
Yeah.
So followed Popshift, and I was like, okay, cool. Like they're doing something. Like let me just keep in touch. And this is like less than 10,000 followers, I want to say, on Instagram, maybe 10K max. And at some point, like they, on Popshift's Instagram, it was like, hey, we're looking for, director, producers, editors, and whatnot. And I was like, oh, let me like apply. Like I don't think they have anything to like give me a full-time job, but it would be really
Sure.
cool to produce a show with them, and maybe I'll do it through Click Play or whatnot. So I applied, and like Raghu, who's the founder of Popshift, a mastermind, he saw my resume and he like hits me up like, hey, like I see you say you're a producer, like this and that. Can you like create a show pitch as like, part of this application? I was like, sure. I've pitched before, created proposals, so why not? Created a pitch. It was called Haldi Milk, and it was just kind of like a cooking show about generations and whatnot. So I sent that over to him, and like within 30 minutes of me sending, he's like, hey, this is great. I'm actually going to be in New York shooting this like second season of They See Me Dating and some other stuff. Why don't we meet up for dinner? He brought along Thage, didn't tell either of us that the other person's coming.
Okay.
And me and Thage followed each other, and if anyone knows me, like they know like Thage is always on my Instagram. He's like one of my best friends. Like we're always
like
doing
two
stuff
peas in a pod.
for real. Like that's my duo. So he and like Thage and I like look at each other like, yo, I know you. And then that was like me, Thage, Raghu all met on the same day, and it was like kind of iconic, or at least we like to think so, in like our little world. And then he brought me on to like hot takes shoot the next day. He's like, yo, just come hang out on set. So I get there. He's like, actually, do you want to be part of it? It's like, sure.
Nice.
And then one of the episodes, we shot 2 episodes that day. I was in the first one. Second one, I was just kind of like sitting next to him, giving him my advice and my take on things. He's like, oh, this is cool. And yeah, so eventually he's like, yo, I'd love to have you on full time, like, and when the time's right. So I was finishing up a show with Click Play Films. It was like a web show. So I was like, hey, as soon as I finish this, like, I'll work with you full time.
And you're one of the first full-time members of Popshift?
I was one of the first.
Okay. For the audience, could you also explain Popshift in kind of 1 or 2 sentences?
Yeah, so Popshift is a South Asian American digital content platform. I personally like to, say it's a content and event house. So Popshift is not only producing South Asian content for YouTube, social media, but also curating events for the same audience. I was working with Popshift, almost ran up to a year. And yeah, then kind of like have this feeling again where it was like, I was looking back and I was like, I've done a lot of work with Popshift, but it somehow like wasn't my work. You know what I mean? Like it's like I just know like I really want to foray into more like scripted content. I want to make kind of like things that are not like, and throughout my career, like with Zee TV, even with like Click Play, the web show that we were working was like a travel show. So it was all like reality TV. They See Me Dating's a reality TV show at the heart of it, right? And I was kind of like, yo, like I don't really want to do reality TV. Like this isn't what gives me happiness. I really want to tell stories in different ways. And so, that was a bittersweet conversation, I would say. Like, like I have a lot of love for Raghu. I owe a lot to him as well. A lot of respect for him. And I love what Popshift is building and hope, like I'm still going to be a part of it somehow, I know. But yeah, so I was kind of like, look, I kind of need to do my own thing now. And I think this is like, finally, it's like, I was working for Zee TV, building up whatever my director and like the CEO wanted. I was working for Click Play, and I was working on whatever Jacob wanted. And then I was working for Popshift on like whatever Raghu wanted. I was like, yo, like it's time for me to do what I want. And so, yeah, so now I'm working on this agency with a couple of friends to just kind of get like the ad work or like the creative work that we're excited about, which is really there to mainly fund projects that we really want to make. And that's kind of the plan is like, I want to do scripted content. Tamid wants to do like docuseries. Sarawar wants to do like Twitch series and like different like vlog style content and whatnot. And so we're really like, yo, why don't we put our hearts and like put our heads together, put our talents together, get a bunch of work done, and then use all the leftovers to just create stuff we're really passionate about.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. And then the other thing I'm like working on right now is like a TV pilot. I'm trying to get that off the ground, and it's like an Indian succession story. And this was lying around in my drawer since like 2018 is when I wrote it. And then last year, like just happened like come across like my files. I was like, oh, like let me reread this, and I was like, oh, there's weight here. And I think like the universe really like puts you in the right places at the right time. Happened to walk into a cafe to meet someone from social media for the first time who had was like, hey, we're both producers, directors, content creators. Like we should meet up. Let's talk about what we want to do. And one of her friends who was a writer happened to be at that cafe. And so happened to be introduced to her. And I just was like, I like just brought this, like read the story again. And I was, thinking that there might be some weight into it. They had just completed a short film and they were looking for an editor. Like they just finished filming it. And I was like, oh, how about this? Like I'll edit your short film for free if you will edit my script. Like I need someone to like really read this who's a writer and like give me feedback, like edit it. And they're like, done deal. And then, that writer's Dinny, she read it and she's like, Ashish, you have like something truly beautiful here.
Oh,
There's so much potential. You've created like this like wonderful world, wonderful characters. Like, can I please like rewrite this, like entirely? And I was like, you're saying two different things. Like, you want to break it apart? She's like, no, no, no. Like, all the characters are there. You just got to like elongate this. Like, you're doing too much in one episode. I was like, look, you're the writer, you're the professional, do it. So she rewrites it, takes a long time, but comes back. She's like, okay, I've rewritten this. You're going to be shocked. But like, also, can I be a co-writer on this project? And I'm like,
wow.
I was like, okay, so you have a lot of faith in me right now. This woman's like writing feature films for money,
Yeah.
and like all these projects that she's like actively being paid for. So I was like, okay, there's something here if you want to do this for free.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we've been working on that and have started pitching it. And, some people have been like asking about it. And so fingers crossed, like that's like one project that, gets off the ground.
And I think one beautiful theme throughout all of this that we all also kind of touched upon a bit earlier is the impact of the butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really nice that one thing led to the next. It was this beautiful chain reaction domino effect, starting from probably you deciding not to be pre-med in college.
But I was just like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be like a director. Like, just that moment of like, oh, can you do this? And like doing it like led me to the dance circuit, led me to creating my dance competition, led me to Legends, to Zee TV, and like all of that. And so like that's like that one early moment in college where I'm like, okay, butterfly effect.
I think another crucial component of the butterfly effect is your willingness to leave situations when they no longer serve you.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people get boxed into kind of the career that they feel like they have to do. And they've kind of convinced themselves that, because of A through Z societal factors, I need to do this for the rest of my life, whether it's because of money or it makes my parents happy, it makes whoever happy. And I think that the beauty of your journey is it's really just you listening to nobody else on this earth but yourself and your inner voice. And you're basically just saying, okay, I'm done with this. My gut's telling me that it's time for me to do this now. So then you jump ship and you do. And you do so respectfully. It sounds like you always wait for like, the project to wrap up and you communicate it in an effective, polite manner where the bridge isn't burned.
Mm-hmm.
But I really admire that because I think that's very difficult. And for me personally, so I recently left my investment banking job, which is my first moment in life, I think, walking away from something that I thought that I was meant to do, that I had to do for external reasons. And really just listening to my voice and saying, no, this isn't right. So I'm hoping that this is the beginning of my butterfly effect. Yeah. But hearing yours has been really, really inspiring. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. And I wish you all the luck in the world. I think like you're gonna, if this isn't work, like you're gonna learn everything for that next thing to work. And that's kind of what I've learned is like when things don't serve you, it's because you've learned something better.
Yeah.
Right. And like I hope this works out and I hope like this is like a resounding success. But like I think life always surprises us with something new. It's like, oh, this is why I had to do this last thing.
Yeah, and I think everything happens for a reason. And I think that's also something that I mentioned in this Shout Out LA article recently that talked about the show and everything that's going on here is I said that I don't live in fear of failure. I live in fear of a life of complacency.
Yeah.
I think failure is actually a beautiful thing because it's a byproduct of actually having tried something. And at the very worst case, you're just learning a lesson that you take with you to the next experience, which is really what maybe you were meant for later on down the road.
Yeah.
You just don't have that foresight in the present, so you don't know till it pans out the way it's meant to.
Yeah. I firmly believe like when you put your work out into the world as like a creative, like when the time is right, the universe will put out what's right for you. You know what I mean? Even with like the story I was telling with like the script, like I had, put this out finally, like done the table read. It was the first time I was sharing my creative work publicly. And during that table read, I had specifically was like, hey, like I'm going to start pitching in February, right? January 31st hits and my friend's like, hey, I have this person I want to send your stuff to. Is it ready?
Wow.
It was not ready. Okay. Spent the entire night like doing it. Sent it. Didn't even like realize until like I sent it. I was like, yo, it's February 1st. Like I told the universe I was going to send pitches out. First day, like here's my pitch. It's now sent out to like people that hopefully will, want to do something with it. But like, again, like it was like I had just been putting this out in the world, manifesting it, sharing it so that people even like knew it was like top of mind and like the universe was like, hey, like here's an opportunity. Like now it's your turn to like put the work in so that it works for you, So yeah, I think with creatives, a lot of us don't do that. A lot of us hide that stuff. We don't share what we're proud of. And I think like you just never know who's watching or listening.
I think it's also a matter of self-respect. It sounds like you have an adherence to kind of your own desires and the deadlines that you set as well too, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So I think it's just a matter of really believing in your own product and following through on the things that you say you're going to do.
Mhm.
And I think that's huge. And I agree with you too that a lot of it is just sharing and seeing what resonates. It's just throwing something at the wall over and over again until something sticks. So you spent how long were you at Popshift for in total?
So full time, like 10 months. And then, I've worked with them like on and off on like certain other projects for like
Okay.
over a year and a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be some of your key learnings that you would like to share for the audience? Because I think a lot of people see Popshift, but it would be nice to understand from behind the scenes what your key takeaways were from that experience.
Ragu really reinforced how nimble you can be, right? Like, and it's so funny because we had bought lenses, we had bought tripods, we had bought lights, and at some point, Ragu was like, "Yo, like, I just want you to shoot with your phone," right? And I'm like, "Why? Like, I just bought a camera, like, I want to use it." It's like, "No, like, it doesn't look good. It's not as easy. Like, it's like causing more workflow stuff. Like, we'll be faster if we do this, right?" And it's like one of those, and those videos blew up, like, and I'm just like, okay, there was no reason to not have there was no reason for a better camera in these positions and
Right.
whatnot. And so it's just like throughout college, I think this was something like I've done a lot. Like throughout college, I made excuses. Even now, I'm sure I'm making some sort of excuses of like, I don't have this, I don't have that, right?
Sure.
And Popshift, everyone thinks is like this huge team. And, at some point it was like 3 full-time employees and like a few part-time ones that are just like really passionate about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of like figuring it out with what you have. And I think that's like the biggest learning from Popshift is like you can make something great, you can make something at a large scale without as many resources as you think,
Yeah.
right? Our sets are like bare bones when we're shooting even like Desi dating. Like it is the minimal amount of people that we need. We don't need a ton of people. You just need a lot of people to be very committed and able to wear a lot of hats,
Yeah.
right? A lot of our content is just filmed on iPhones, right? You just need to know how to tell a story, put it together in the edit, or ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, like the biggest takeaway. If anyone can learn anything from Popshift, it's like you don't need everything. You just need to know how to execute.
That's actually a great lesson. I think it's applicable in a lot of different facets of life for a lot of people listening, hopefully. And what have been kind of some of the personal lessons that you've taken away from your time in the entertainment industry so far? I know we talked about this a bit outlined, but you had mentioned setting boundaries and things of that nature. So I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I think like personal lessons. I'm just a very like giving person in general. Like I'm really excited to support any creative person that I can. And at some point, I realized like I'm being taken advantage of in a lot of places, and again, like my like DM requests are flooded with like, hey, put me on this, dude, let me do this, let me listen to my music,
Sure.
and at some point I was like, yo, I have to create a boundary between like trying to support the entire South Asian creative world versus like those who are really helping themselves or are really like putting in the effort, right?
Yeah.
And that was like a hard one because it's like I don't feel good. No one feels good saying no, like I don't want to help you or like no, I can't help you or
Of
whatever it
course.
might be. But that and like that was kind of like one of the biggest boundaries that I just had to set is like I can't reply to everyone. I can't help everyone. And I need to reclaim a lot more time for myself.
Of course.
And there are people who like there's like, yo, like let's catch up. And I'm like, oh cool, like I haven't heard from you in a minute. Like, oh, like, I saw you were with Popshift. Can we do something? And I'm just like, oh, you didn't actually want to catch up.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that kind of like sucked and other ways of just like people trying to like, use you to get something they want.
Of course.
I think the other thing just in my time in kind of like the so like South Asian creative scene is there's a lot of events, there's a lot of fun stuff going on, and it's really like easy to get FOMO for not going to things, and it's really
Sure.
easy to just like get caught up in like the excitement of going to everything. And I think I did a lot of that last year. Like I went to like as many events as I could, was hanging out with the same people, and like at some point I was like I like counted this because I went to like 7 weddings last year. And then I like looked at like, I had like time that were like, Popshift events were also on weekends that I'm working. Some shoots were on weekends. And I was like, yo, like all these other weekends I'm like going to these events and like did not like I think I might have had like maybe 4 weekends max where like it was just a weekend to myself all of last year.
Wow.
Right. And there was this point where I was like craving just like time to myself. And this year I was kind of like, I went to all these events. Most of the people I'm not even like hanging out with afterward. Right.
Yeah.
It's great. You're seeing the same faces. They're all wonderful people, but like you only have time for so many. And I think also in New York, a lot of people are really like more gung ho about their like full time jobs, and like that's where they're really trying to grow. And this
Right.
like other creative side is more of a hobby, and like they're not as serious about that. And
Sure.
that's my full time job, right? So I was like, like I really need to spend time with those people that are like growing with me and serving that sort of need for me in terms of like their creative ambitions and creative pursuits. And so yeah, this year I was like, like I'm not going to go to as many events, and
That's great.
I'm gonna like I need to reclaim that time because I'm taking a risk on myself. I have all my personal projects that got sidelined by like just like the attention and the fun and whatnot. I think that's like another one where like we're in this scene, we're going to all these things, and maybe from the outside in, it looks like we're all best friends and we're all having so much fun, and like it's fun and we're friends, but like it's not as meaningful as your closer friends or like the projects you want to work on.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that that's a very common feeling for a lot of people in this space. One thing that we talked about in the episode with Omika, which was one of the first interview episodes, was the concept of junk food socializing.
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of had the same realization that you talked about, which is that, you're in these big settings, and sure, on social media it looks glamorous and glorious, but really it's fleeting conversations. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just the nature of these environments. There's so many people, and you want to see everybody that you know. It's hard to extract deeper value a lot of times, unless it's in a smaller, more intimate setting, which is why I absolutely loved your 2024 resolutions ins and out post that you had on Instagram.
Yeah.
I read through it word for word, and I really admired your dedication to kind of filtering out the social interaction that doesn't maybe serve you as much, and create spaces that are more fulfilling for people in your circles. So I really like that a lot. And I commend you for having the courage to put that out on social media, because it's not always a popular opinion.
Like, yeah, that was definitely, I think the other thing I was feeling a lot from last year is, I'm also going to these events. I'm putting them on my story. I'm vlogging them. And at some point, like, it's curated, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not having as good of a time as I'm showing you.
Sure.
Right. And
we all do that.
And then I'm talking, yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point of social media. It's like, look how much fun I'm having that I'm not actually having.
Yeah.
But like, I was just like, I'm feeling this way. I'm talking to other people who are feeling this way. Like, why am I not just like, I'm trying to be more real and more raw on social media. Like, there's always going to be like a little bit of glitz and glamour. And that was like part of it. Like, I'm like, like I have these thoughts, and I'm sure other people are having these thoughts, and no one's saying anything. So we're all just continuously like not breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like 2024 is really, again, like the theme is just like reclaim my time for reclaim my time and reinvest it into myself. So yeah, like I want to stop going to a lot of these like events. It's like Fashion Week. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, like I know nothing about fashion. I'm still wearing skinny jeans. Like why would I go to these things when I could just use that time to like write my story? But yeah, like I did this last week. Omika was there, where I was like, I'm just gonna bring 10 people, and this also sucks because I'm a people person. I hate saying no to people, and I know a good amount of the scene, but I was like, it's got to be small. It's got to be intimate. Like, we're gonna come to one place. We're gonna write our manifestations, our goals on a piece of paper, and we're gonna talk about each other and what we admire about each other. And it was like this like very wholesome night where a lot of people would just kind of like realize things about themselves, realized how people viewed them that they didn't really know or see for themselves. And it was like, I literally got a text today, like a week later, and they're like, yo, thank you for doing that. Like, I'm so ready for this week. I'm energized to like do my own projects. I'm like, thank God. Like, this is like the energy that I'm not getting from any of these events, right?
Yeah.
This is like the passion. It's like, it just refuels you and re-inspires you to be like, yo, like the whole point of that night was like, write your vision, write your goal, write your purpose. We're going to take that piece of paper, we're going to hide it somewhere. So like every now and then you're reminded of like what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. And I feel like even just like the energy of that night, like reminded people of that, and they're still feeling that. And they're like, yeah, like I do need to go and do these things. And that was like the whole point.
That is so beautiful. That sounds so wholesome and fulfilling.
It was so wholesome.
And I think there needs to be more of that. I think there needs to be more of that and less of these like social media curated events. I mean, I understand why those exist too, and they're great in their own way sometimes. I really want to see more of that too, because that's something that I personally have been struggling with a lot too is, like, I'm doing this whole show, but it requires a lot of time. And I'm not in a position financially where I can make this my full-time job at this point in time. So I have to focus on, looking for a new full-time job after leaving investment banking. And I feel so drained all the time. And the last thing that helps is going to like a big event or a gathering. In the past few months, I want to say right now we're filming this in February. This will probably air a bit later, but I started working on this show in October. And I think since then I've had a major lifestyle shift of starting to say no to people and say no to events and things, and really just put myself in spaces that are really fulfilling. And if I'm putting myself in a big space, it has to be for a very good reason, a very good purpose to put myself in that space that I know isn't going to be as fulfilling. And a lot of times it feels like a bit of a performance, you know, when you're in that setting. You want to look nice because there's cameras. You want to talk to people. You want to be smiley and warm and inviting, even though maybe on the inside you're like, I just had a really long day.
Yeah.
I just want to get in bed. So I love everything you're saying. I feel like you like touched my soul so deeply. I'm serious. It sounds weird, but I just like, I love every word of that. So
Awesome.
thank you for being that person. As you look at your career in the long-term horizon, are there any sort of fears that you have being in the entertainment industry, personal or career related?
A saying that's stuck with me since college, and it's like, you know, it all works out in the end, and if it's not working out, it's not the end.
Yeah.
I think like there's a few superpowers that I believe I have, and one of them is just like truthfully like just believing in myself. Like I
Yeah.
know I'm gonna be fine in whatever situation I'm thrown in. I think life has at least like proven that so far. Like the fear is like not doing it for me, and it's kind of just like looking back and being like, because I do that to this day. I'm like, yo, why didn't I start YouTube videos in college? Like, you know, like I regret not like having the confidence or just like the drive or making all the excuses that I did back then to not do that, because I was like, oh, if I did that then, like where would I be now, right?
Yeah.
And the fear is like, yo, if I don't get to do what I want, like life is gonna not be worth it.
Doing what you've done and leaving Popshift and starting your own agency and working on the TV pod is kind of an answer to fears past of, you know, I don't want to be stuck in this cycle.
Yeah.
And final question, in the midst of all the noise out there in the world, what would be your key message to viewers?
It truthfully breaks my heart when I see people making the same mistakes that I did. I don't want a kid growing up in a society telling them that they can't be something, right? And then making that the reason why they don't become that thing. Society's just like, you need a security net, right? You need to have a stable job. You need to do this. And I'm like, yo, the fun is in the struggle. The fun is in figuring it out. The fun is in like the satisfaction that you get when you got it. You know what I mean? And I think like the message is like, take your chance, right? There is no reason today that like if you want something truthfully, like you can't attain it, right? You have YouTube to learn things, you've got TikTok to learn things, you've got all these articles, all these free resources that are at your hands now, right? For you to just be like, yo, I want this and like not attain it is like yourself at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like the message is just like take that chance, like remove that security net, believe in yourself and like fall a little bit, but like get back up and you'll be flying soon.
It's a really important message, I think, for a lot of people listening, because it's scary to take that leap sometimes. And ultimately, you do just have to take that chance on yourself at some point and believe in yourself that it will work out. And if it won't, that, you know, you'll find the right thing down the road.
There's also just ways to be strategic about it, right? So I think most people are just like, oh, well, I don't know this, don't know this, don't know this. I have 3 superpowers, which I'll, I guess, like say, like one of them is like that confidence in myself, just like believing in myself, right? Number 2 is like being able to pick up things really quickly. I think I have a knack for that. Like I know like if I need to learn something somehow, I'm just able to break down like the videos or lessons or articles that I need to go through to learn that thing. And generally this has just come as like a byproduct of like when I was making websites on Neopets, like I would go to other websites to learn how to do that, right? Like I would have to learn how to code in HTML. What's the breakdown of like what I need to learn before I'm at this point where I can take that leap? And then like the third superpower that I have, I think is I'm really good at connecting with people and connecting people. I think like we live in a society, you have to be able to get along with other people, you're going to need them.
Yeah.
And the more they need you, the more they'll like you.
Yeah.
So if you can help them out, help doesn't have to be you doing something. It can just be you connecting them with someone that they need. I think those like 3 superpowers turn into like, how do you believe in yourself and how do you like take that leap in a way that's not just like, yo, like let me close my eyes and jump.
That's very sound advice. And I think it comes from a place of wisdom and experience. So thank you. That's all for today. Thank you all so much for listening. Tune back in next week for the next episode. And in the meantime, I'm your host, Sandlina Sitar, signing off. Woo!
Let's go.
Nice.